Hello friends and welcome to StudyIQ. I'm Joyce Joy and today in this lecture we will discuss about India's import dependency for oil or fuel. Now coming to the current affair, India has a high dependency on oil imports or fuel imports, and this high dependency of India on fuel imports has led to many a times crisis and also macroeconomic instability. So now considering the financial crisis or the economic crisis and also the macroeconomic instability oil imports or fuel imports has caused, India has to think about strategic measures in order to survive during a crisis or to prevent a macroeconomic instability. For example, high rates of inflation, especially cost push inflation, which will increase the cost of production in most of the sectors of the Indian economy. So this is a major macroeconomic challenge. Likewise, there are many macroeconomic challenges and crises associated with the high dependency of India on import of fuel and oil. So based on this, we will discuss about how to deal with India's oil import dependence. Now before we begin, this is our channel StudyIQ and we are providing pen drive courses for various competitive examinations including SSC bank courses, UPSC optionals, SSC JE courses, teaching examinations, railway examinations, defense examinations, RBI grade B, NABARD grade A, UGC NET, UPSC Civil Services Examination, CLAT exams for various state PSCs and also for various professional courses. You can visit our website www.studyiq.com for more details, or you can call to any of these numbers for more information. Now coming to our content and the topic, first let us understand how far India is dependent on oil imports or fuel imports. Now India imports over 80% of its crude oil. So 80% of its crude oil requirements are met by imports, and these imports are mainly met from those countries like Iraq, Saudi Arabia and Iran. So these are the three major economies which imports oil to India. Now coming to India's import dependency in its energy mix, it has also increased from 21% in the year 2000 to 36% in the year 2015, and it is expected that by 2040 this will increase to 50%. So generally we can say that there is a rising import dependency for India, especially with regard to oil and fuel requirements. Now moving on to the current challenges of India with regard to import of fuel and oil. India is a developing economy which is focusing more on development. So development definitely includes modernization dimension also. So when an economy gets modernized, there will definitely be more demand for oil and fuel. So increase in the aggregate demand in the economy, which is caused due to modernization or in the process of modernizing the economy, is definitely a challenge for India. So with more developmental needs for the economy, with more focus on increasing output, on increasing infrastructure, on modernizing the economy, there will be more needs on fuel and oil. So as we have discussed in the beginning, 80% of the crude oil requirements of the country is met only by imports. So this import dependency is expected to increase. And secondly, India has lack of resources for oil, gas and metallurgical coal. So lack of resources and increase in demand. So whenever there is an increase in demand, this has to be met by supply. So supply can be from both domestic sources and outside sources or external sources. But in case of India, there is a lack of domestic sources. So the demand has to be met by supply which is available from external sources. And this is what we call as import of commodities. So here, in case of India's oil requirements and fuel requirements, since there is no option for a domestic availability of the resources, India has to depend on external economy through import of oil and fuel. So now it is seen that the demand for imports of oil and fuel is expected to increase. So this import dependency and rising import dependency will definitely have a consequence on the external balance, that is on the BOP, balance of payment, and it can also cause a macroeconomic instability. So the macroeconomic stability would be hampered and also the balance of payment would be in crisis. For example, a spike in the price of oil will increase the inflation levels as we discussed in the beginning. So inflation is a major macroeconomic parameter that determines whether we have a stable economy or not. So it will definitely have a challenge on inflation, and this will have an impact on fiscal deficit. It will also have an impact on balance of payment. So we can say that the macroeconomic stability would be in a crisis, or economy will move towards an economic crisis in case of a increased or rising dependency or an over dependency on imports for our oil and fuel requirements. Now let us also understand what are the alternatives that are available for India, and are these alternatives feasible and effective. Now one of the alternatives that is available in India is the resource of coal. So India has an extensive resource of coal, but there are certain challenges or drawback with this resources of coal. So we will see what are they. The first major challenge is the quality of the coal. So even though there is abundant availability of coal resources in the country, most of them are not of the quality that is required. So in order to ensure that the coal is of standard quality and also it can serve as a clean fuel, this coal needs to be processed or washed. So in the process of washing or processing, this will need huge amount of water. So here the availability of water in water stress areas around a coal plant would be a challenge. For example, the Vidarbha district of Maharashtra, it is a water stress area, and in such areas this can lead to ecological imbalance. And also the effects of coal-fired plants emissions, the emissions can lead to health consequences or environmental degradation, because mostly the emissions are of greenhouse gases, and this will have a direct impact on the health of the people living in the area and also on the ecology and environment of the area. So considering these drawbacks, we need to find out some other alternatives as well along with the coal. So second alternative that is available is renewable energy sources. So renewable energy sources means those energy sources that can be renewed or replenished in a certain period of time. For example, solar energy, wind energy, etc. are considered to be renewable energy resources because they can be renewed or they can be replenished in a period of time. But such type of renewable energy sources also has certain challenges or shortcomings. For example, the solar energy, they are variable in terms of output. It means that the solar firms will produce energy only when the sun is shining. Another example, wind energy. They are also variable in terms of output because the wind farms can produce power only when the wind is blowing. So there are certain shortcomings for renewable sources of energy as well. Now in this context, we will see what is the way ahead for India. So in the beginning, we have discussed that India has to come up with strategic measures in order to avoid any kind of macroeconomic instability or any economic crisis due to excess of imports. So what can be the strategic methods? One example of such a strategic measure would be to ensure sufficient reserves are available in India. So this reserves will help India to survive in a critical situation. For example, when the prices of imports goes up, India can ensure or should ensure reserves so that it can use resources from the reserves at the time of crisis in order to ensure that there will not be a macroeconomic instability. And in this regard, India has already made strategic oil reserves in cooperation with UAE and Saudi Arabia. So this can be seen as a very good step from the part of the government. So when there is a reserve available, when the demand is high and when the supply is less, definitely there is a tendency for a price rise which will lead to a cost push inflation in the economy. So at that time, what the government can do is the government can release the reserves and it can meet the increasing demand and the gap that is caused due to decrease in supply. So this will not create a rise in the prices and there will be macroeconomic stability. For example, there will not be excess rates of inflation, there will not be widening of fiscal deficit, etc. So this is the advantage of reserves. Now secondly, the government and the policy makers should try to maintain a healthy balance of trade. So balance of trade does not have just one component, that is import of oil and fuels. So balance of trade is usually dependent on exports as well as imports. So it is not just imports that is counted in balance of trade. It is exports also which is counted. So in order to maintain a healthy balance of trade, what can be done? The exports can be increased. So in order to meet the excess imports or the import bills, we can increase the exports. So the government and the policy makers should focus on export oriented sectors or export intensive sectors in order to increase the quantity of the exports from India so that we can maintain a healthy balance of trade. So this will help in the long run. So for a country like India, which does not have enough resources to produce fuel or oil or energy requirements from its own territory, and we are highly dependent on imports, what can be effectively done is to increase the exports so that we can maintain a healthy balance of trade, and thereby the BOP situation will normalize, the currency will be stable, the inflation rates would also be stable, and thereby finally we can achieve a macroeconomic stability. You can find the PDF of this lecture on my Facebook page, and for any queries regarding your preparations, you can get in touch with me on my Facebook page, or you can email me at joyshi.studyiq@gmail.com. Thank you.